right, hoping I am live now again. Continuing on with some Mutant Year Zero. Hopefully finish this up this week and, be able to go back to Scion, talking about some other stuff. Give a minute for people to get online and watching. All right. Well, here we are, ladies and gentlemen, students of mine, Mutant Year Zero, kind of the last bit talking about the game, how it plays, how it started, creating your characters, kind of the beginning steps for Mutant Year Zero to really hook you into it, hopefully. So, over the last couple weeks, we have made characters. You've made your arc, created some people in it, and now you've just got to get to surviving and exploring. And that means going out into the zone. The zone is separated into sectors. Each sector takes approximately 4 hours to explore. You can see here on the left there, that's one of the standard maps included in the book. Oh, looks like I am not connected to watching. That is useful and important so that I can have some idea of what the heck is going on here. Maybe. I don't know. Well, I don't know. We'll see what's happening there. Anywho, so yeah, so when you are exploring, you're exploring the zone. Sorry, it's separated into sectors. Each sector's, about 4 hours to explore. A very dense sector, multiple buildings, particularly tall, big buildings, take a little bit more time. And of course, obviously very open ones, just a plain marsh or, plain with nothing really on it. Well, that's not going to take too long to look through now, is it? So, yeah, as you can see there, that's a map of what they call the Big Smoke, which is London, and that's the Thames River you can see there. And so, each of those sectors you can see separated out, that's where you're going to find all kinds of things. It's where you're going to find really just about anything in this world that you're looking for. So, you're going to find water. You need it to survive. Grub, food, you need it to survive. Artifacts, you need to find them to get better, to make the arc better, to improve your lives. Threats, monsters, people, all kinds of things. And that means, you got to avoid them, probably, to survive. And ruins. There's old buildings. As much as the plague and the wars destroyed things, this post-apocalypse is pretty intact building-wise, particularly large buildings. It's more that nature has taken over and really, really made that a bit of a mess of things. So you're gonna, find some water, find some grub, find some artifacts, find some threats, hopefully not, and find some ruins to explore and look around in. Each sector is generated randomly. Now that's, I talked in my last video about this. I think personally, I like making the map and at least most of the sectors, particularly, around where the arc is ahead of time. I think it just makes a certain amount of sense more that I'll talk about a little bit more in the next slide. But there are roles, so threats, artifacts, ruins, grub, water, everything is all determined by roles, whether it be your roles to see if there are threats, artifacts, or ruins, or your stalker's roles to see if there is grub or water. And I want to call attention here. So on the left there's a little map that is actually from an IO thing created by a Redditor called Find My Path. I absolutely love it. I am falling in more love with it every day. You can literally generate a map, however, whatever dimensions you want, 20 by 30, 11 by 33, whatever, and it just makes that space for you. And then as you click on one of the sectors, you can have the app generate what's in that sector randomly. Rather than you having to actually roll in the book, it basically does that roll for you, which I gotta say I am a big fan of. I think it makes a lot of sense, and I think it's a really great way to be able to kind of, see all of those things without having to work quite so hard. And you can even save the map. You can see it later. All kinds of wonderful things. Like I said, I'm just a big fan. I think that it is probably my favorite way to make a zone at this point, and I might even amend what I'm doing right now to make Normal, because right now I'm just putting it together in an Excel sheet, which works. It's good and it's easily navigatable, but this looks way more navigatable. And even can give you, you can mark things explored or unexplored. You can set what's in there, or you can roll it randomly. Really, just really spectacular. I am a huge fan at this point. So I would highly recommend that if this is a game that you're interested in, go look at Find My Path and see if that's something that is for you. Speaking of Find the Path, so Find the Path is the Stalker unique skill. Okay, so no other class, for lack of a better word, in this game can take that skill. All right. Find the Path is the most important thing for exploring the zone. Literally, the way it's written right now, any expedition is doomed without Find the Path. It is the only way to see threats before they see you. So if you don't succeed on a Find the Path roll, or you don't have a stalker, whenever a threat is in a sector, you and it are going to see each other at the same time, or the threat is going to see you before you see it, which is very, very bad. This is already a very deadly system. It is, technically speaking, the way to find clean water and grub in a sector. And that's not even clean grub, it's just clean water. And that is all through extra successes on the roll. And getting successes in this system is not easy. It's also the only way to explore through a zone in less time. And it's the only way to find artifacts. Your stalker has to use some of their successes from Find the Path to find artifacts. Strictly according to the rules, you can't find an artifact without a stalker and without a good Find the Path roll. I'm not a huge fan of that. It is so essential as to be pointless without it. There's literally no point in trying to explore the zone without a stalker, without a high Find the Path skill roll. And I think it kind of holds back the exploration in this game a bit. So how would I fix it? Fix is in quotes for a reason. I don't think it's not impossible to work with. It's just kind of a lot, and it's not great. So I would still let it be used to see threats. I think that's a good thing. I think that is something that a stalker should be able to do, and that an enforcer or a fixer should not be able to do. They know the zone in such a functional way that they can predict and see the signs of creatures and phenomena out here before you can. But other than that ability, I think that this skill should be used to find things that weren't in the sector already. Any party, with or without a stalker, should be able to find what's in a sector by looking, by walking around and searching. And so with Find the Path, you should be able to find rot-free grub. You should be able to find rot-free water. You should be able to find extra artifacts. And you should be able to move through sectors quicker. I think that makes sense. These are things that someone who is truly knowledgeable of the zone, has been out here in this hell multiple times, is able to understand and find in a way that other classes they can't. It's just not in their wheelhouse. They haven't spent the time to really know that sort of thing. And this makes the stalker very important, for exploring the zone, but not essential. You can still find the artifacts that exist. You can still find grub and water. Give it rot. That's fine. You don't know how to find, rot-free grub and rot-free water unless that is a thing that is just in this sector to begin with. Instead, the game master should mark what's in the sector, and then find the path can find things that you haven't written down. And I think that's a really cool way to make the stalker feel extra important, but not essential. That without them, there's no point. Why would you even go into the zone without one? Now, that's still a consideration. This is still a super dangerous place, and why would you go there without an expert? But I can't help your players being idiots. So back to generating sectors, because I mentioned I like to generate them beforehand. This is kind of why, because I think it makes much more interesting things for you to find, but it also makes that change to find the path work. There are things that you've written down. Cool. Anybody can find those things, but with some time to prepare, we can find some really interesting things. Such as when I was generating Norl, I looked at Google Maps. I've talked about that a little bit in some previous streams about using Google Earth to generate New Orleans as a zone. And so in one of the sectors, there was a very prominent perfumery. And now in Norl, that perfumery is kind of the central location in that sector. It smells incredibly sweet. It's attracted some unsavory types because of the smell. I even made a new artifact, perfume, to fit being in there. Now, could I think of that on the fly when they wandered into the sector? Maybe. But, maybe not. Then again, maybe not. I do not know, I honestly have no idea. But I think that I probably wouldn't, in the moment, go, okay, you're going into a new sector. Let me pause, look at Google Earth, find something interesting that's in that sector, and then make it this whole thing. I just don't think it makes sense in the same way. So, all right. Well, you can find, all those things in the zone. Stalker's important. Find the path is important. There are all these sectors. But what is really the most scary thing about the zone and in the zone? And that I've mentioned before a few times, but let's really dig into it now. The rot. The rot is radiation, fallout, nature's revenge against humanity for its crimes. It's all-consuming. The rot is universal. The rot is pervading and treacherous. The rot is your savior from life and your ultimate doom. The rot is in every sector of the zone, pretty much. And your mutants, can only make the most rudimentary protection, and it's just not enough. Luckily, the Ark is in a rot-free sector. So, how does the rot work? Well, each sector that you walk into has a rating for how often, mutants and characters that are in it get rot points. And so that is, once every day, once every hour, at the worst, once every minute, which is terrifying. But whenever you get a rot point, you roll d6s equal to your current rot points. And each 6 that you generate gets you 1 point of trauma to your strength score, also known as damage. Damage is bad, and we'll get to that in a second after this. That's actually kind of my next stop. So, for instance, if you've got 5 rot and you get another rot from being in a zone, in a sector with rot, you're now going to roll 6 dice, and any 6s that you get are damage to your strength score. Your strength is at a maximum 5, so you can take 5 damage from rot before you're basically dead. That's bad. That's really, really bad. And it's just going to build up and build and build and build and build. And even worse, when you attempt to heal rot points, Not your damage from rot, but rot points that you've marked on your character sheet. So if you got 6 rot points now, you try to heal all those, you would have to roll a d6 for each of those rot points that you heal. If you roll a 6, that rot point becomes permanent. And because of that, eventually, you will be stuck rolling, 10 dice, 12 dice, 20 dice every time you gain rot at all. That's really bad. Like I said, you can only have a 5 in strength, and that is just horrible. If you're rolling 10 dice, literally math says you're going to get likely 2 points of damage. That's a lot. That's 40% of you. Speaking of damage, so let's talk about trauma. All right, when you take trauma of any kind, it applies to one of your attributes, and then that attribute is lowered. So, for instance, if you had a strength of, say, 5, so normally for an attack roll, you would add your strength and your melee, and you would roll that many dice, okay? Well, if your strength is normally 5 and your melee is normally 3, you'd normally roll 8 dice. If you take 1 point of damage of strength trauma, now you're going to roll 7 dice. It's a death spiral. Every point of trauma that you take is making you less effective, and significantly so. It is very, very rare that you'll roll more than 10 dice in this system. So every point of damage that you take is 1/10 at the least of your potential. And that's a bad time. So every accident can be a catastrophe. Every little bit of damage builds the tension, and even small conflicts can honestly spell disaster. Because it's easy to get damage, and it's easier to get damage than get rid of damage. And most importantly, whenever you're at 0 in any of these, in any of these attributes, I should have added attributes to that statement. Whenever you're at 0 in any of these attributes, that spells disaster. If you're at 0 in any attribute, if you are attacked or dealt damage in any way, you die. There's no save. There's no nothing. You were broken. And that doesn't just mean from strength. It could be from agility. It could be from wits. It could be from empathy. Any of these break your ability to function. So, we've already talked a little bit about strength damage, also known as damage, strength trauma. You lose it from rot, you lose it from attacks. Then, of course, you've got agility loss. That comes from exhaustion and dehydration. It's called fatigue. You've got wits trauma, which is called confusion, and can be caused by any number of kind of mental effects, including just being confused. And then empathy is called doubt, and it's lowered by distrust and disappointment and bad outcomes. Again, any of these ending up at 0 is disastrous for your character. So, recovering, how are you going to get them back? How are you going to, hopefully not just die? Well, to get back strength, you need to eat grub. You need to eat food. Now, remember, I mentioned rot-free food. That means that most of the food that you're going to find is not rot-free. It's going to inflict a point of rot on you. So you could literally be recovering from strength as you're taking in rot and rolling dice, hopefully not taking more damage to strength. Agility, you get from water. Water can have rot too. So you could be, regenerating your agility and taking damage to strength. For wits, you need 8 hours of good, clean sleep. And this is my favorite one. To get your empathy back, you have to have genuine connection with another thinking being. You have to role play to heal your empathy. I absolutely love that. It is quite possibly one of my most favorite things about the system is that they make you actually play out a scene with another likely player character, connecting to get your empathy back because you've been plagued with doubt. And it's not easy to come back from that, doubting yourself. This is literally playing on the idea of losing confidence in your own abilities. So, that's how you live and die in the zone. This isn't everything about the system, Mutant Year Zero, obviously, but if you like this, if you like what I've talked about, how it's, deadly to a point, but also very much about hope and about finding something greater in the worst of circumstances, buy the book. I can't recommend it enough. I've covered a lot here in character creation, arc creation, and kind of the basic feelings of the game. If you like this idea, I can't encourage you to buy this book enough. Free League Publishing is absolutely fantastic. I'm a big fan of them, and I think they really knocked it out of the park on this one. So, homework for this week. Would you prefer, if you were making a mutant, would you want to have all your attributes around 3, so they're all kind of average, maybe a little above average, or would you want to have 1 at a 5, but also 1 at a 1? So easily to be broken if that one attribute is damaged at all, but you're really, really good at one of your attributes. That's huge for you to be capable at something. This is my last lecture on Mutant Year Zero, probably until I'm running a game in it, or if I decide to cover some other topics. The idea of Eden and the meta plot within this game is very intriguing to me, but I always hesitate with topics like that because it is very spoiler-filled, not just for game masters, but kind of for anyone interested in this. The meta plot to this game is very important. What Eden is, that it actually really exists, and what you're going to find there and how to get there. That's, it's kind of the whole point, but at the same time, it is a really massive, massive spoiler. So there may be other topics to cover, but like I said, I don't want to give the whole game away. At a certain point, I want you to buy the book. I want you to explore it. If you're interested in this sort of thing, go read it. Go see all the amazing things that it can produce on your own. I can only tell you so much. I can only guide you the way. Next week, we are back to Scion. Session 2 happened a couple weeks ago. Session 3 is happening in 2 days. So I'll have a couple weeks of talking about Scion and the exciting things that are happening with Ryan Cardone, Charles Jenkins, John James Williams, and Painkiller Jane. Well, this was a pretty short video this time, only 22 minutes. I'm happy with that. I don't like to go long when I can, and I think this is a really great video, kind of finish up all the wonderful, beautiful things about the system. So, ladies and gentlemen, I will see you next week, next Wednesday, same bat time, same bat channel. In the meantime,